Good afternoon. I'm either blessed or cursed to be between you and the reception. I'm going to pretend like I'm blessed for the moment. So I want to talk about data for the next 15 to 20 minutes. So first, I want you to imagine that you're building your product. It's a phenomenal product. You're building a product and a website that takes, I don't know, every image and turns it into unicorns and rainbows. We'll start there. It's very cool. I got that because my son, my 18-year-old son yesterday was playing, maybe you guys know, a card game about unicorns with baby unicorns and all that. So I was doing this yesterday and thought of that. So somewhere, before you're building this really cool product, you heard a talk, or many talks, about other things that you needed to think about. And one of those things was whether your data practices and your data policies satisfied the definitions of personal information from not just where you're located, but from all over the globe, from the EU, from other continents. Also, with respect to states within the United States, for example, or Germany, or Canada, or what about cities within those states? And is someone going to be able to sue you because you didn't put that cookie banner that's kind of annoying up there on your website? So you heard that. And then, can you deal with the issue that a lot of big companies can deal with, which is data localization? What if every country required that you keep that data within servers in that country? Can you do that as you're a startup building your cool product? And what happens when police from different cities, different states, different countries, they come to you and say, we want access to your user data because X. Can you deal with that? And how are you going to make sure that you are complying on your really cool platform with all of the regulations out there about content? Is there terrorist content on your platform? Is there content that's harassing on your platform? Is there content that some would consider is untruthful? How are you going to do this? And how are you going to do this knowing that every continent, every country, every state may have different definitions of what that means? And then, how are you going to find that free group of lawyers that you can use to create your privacy policy that protects you with every disclaimer in the world that you need so that you're complying with every regulation in every part of the world, everywhere you need it to be? And they're not going to charge you because you don't have any money to pay for them. So imagine that. And then realize that this is actually happening today. This is where we are. We have countries and governments all around the world who are creating laws, detailed laws that impact almost everything that you do on your platforms, with your apps, with your websites. They want to protect their constituents because they're afraid that either we can't do it in technology or we just aren't going to, because we've kind of shown that to be the case. So just think about, I'm sure many of you have heard of GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation in the EU. The GDPR and the key components around protecting privacy, it's pretty cool. Like, some of those things are good. But when it's not detailed enough, or sometimes too detailed, it makes it really challenging for all of us to comply with that. And in the end, I can assure you, because I'm a former lawyer, that requiring all of us to have pages and pages of contracts with different companies around the world that fall within the language of the GDPR are actually not protecting the thing that we should all care about, which are those privacy issues that are impacting all of the people that you want to love your fantastic, awesome platform. So, unless we start making changes today in the way that we do our businesses and set up all of our infrastructure, and unless we change our mindset, and unless we remember that it's their data and not our data, this is the world that we're going to continue to live in. So how did we get here? I'm going to be honest with you and tell you, 17, 20 years ago, I was a lawyer. I was outside counsel, and I represented a lot of new tech. At that point, I was representing Yahoo and Google and a bunch of different companies. And I'm going to tell you that when privacy came up as a thing, we all said, self-regulation. We do not want those regulators getting involved in our business because they have no idea how to do tech. And we got this. We understand tech. We understand users. We don't need them telling us what to do. Well, that's what we thought. We said the number one priority at the time was keeping the government out of our world. We said, hey, government, back off. Don't regulate us. And so what happened? Well, somewhere along the line, shareholder value, capitalism, venture capital backing, that all kind of got in the way. And those things that we actually thought that we could manage and we could take care of actually became secondary. We couldn't actually get an industry standard put in play because there were too many things that we actually didn't think about. Too many things that were consequences of delivering the value to the shareholders that got in the way of making sure that all those things that we cared about, didn't fully understand, quite honestly, but we wanted to make sure we were doing right by, those things got in the way of delivering that value to shareholders. So users took a back seat here, and we removed transparency, a thing that the internet was built on. We manipulated users, we mined their data like crazy. And what do I mean by that? I just want you guys to take a step back and remember, 17 years ago when this all started, before there was any kind of privacy litigation or privacy regulation, we had no idea what we were collecting. We just knew it was a lot of information. We had taken this really advanced revenue system from broadcast media and from print media, and we had placed it on a system that we didn't know how it was going to operate very well. We just know that it was going to generate revenue because it did work. It worked offline. Of course it was going to work online. So we collected everything we could, everything. We collected it all, and we used a tiny portion of it. But at the time, there wasn't like this notion of deletion. There wasn't this notion of anonymization. We were just trying to understand the system. I want to remind you that we started with consensual models in advertising because when we did, for example, when it was about broadcast, in order for someone to know if you actually liked the show or were responsive to advertising, there was a box in your home and that you had to click and you had to provide responses back, but there was a consensual model in play there. And then when you were doing, when you had ads that were put in newspapers, you couldn't actually find out if somebody read that ad. You just had to see if your sales went up or down as a result of it. So today, we know everything, right? We know soup to nuts. When a user actually views an ad, what happens after that? Do they go purchase the product? If they didn't purchase the product, we can send them some ads and say, you should go, and we can retarget you. We know everything that's going on with the users. And the bottom line, and I'm not telling you anything that you don't know, but we took the users and we stopped making products for them. And we made their data the product. And then we just started making products around that because frankly, what worked, what that did is it allowed our shareholders to have value because we were delivering revenue for them. It allowed our shareholders to see that our user base was growing because we were constantly able to deliver more and more value through tech because we could get the revenue in the door. And we did this because we were ultimately delivering value to shareholders. And so good technologies were abused, and companies, they couldn't solve the harms as fast as people expected. And we didn't really focus on it until investigations started happening and regulations started to come into play. And so where has this left us? It's left us in a world where our users are saying, stop. They're trying to create digital walls around them so that you can't collect their data. They're using technologies to block information from being sent to other parties. Half the time, they don't even know the names of the companies that have their data. Again, this isn't news to you. Consumers are angry, and they're losing trust. I think we're all seeing this. This industry is unrecognizable from where we started. The true intent of the internet was about transparency, openness, access. It was about building on those things that allowed users to have control. We all wanted control. But in a rush for this instant and to make things bigger and to provide shareholder value, we kind of lost sight of the good that we can do and that we can bring. Today, we have a society that's more open and more and less, there are fewer taboos in the world, and there's access to information all over. And yet, if consumers don't trust us, well, then none of this really matters. And I think all of us from all different parts of this society in the tech sector are seeing this. We're being told this. It's hitting us over the head. But what if we can still deliver value to our shareholders, and we can still deliver value to our users, and we don't have to vacuum up all the data? Or maybe you need access to all that data, but you actually can engage with users to get all that data. What if we brought the user back to the center? What if we stopped using that data as the product, and we started making products that users wanted to share information so that they could get that? What if we did that? So what do we do now? We are doing what's right doesn't have to mean losing. And I know this, actually, because at Mozilla, we actually do a lot of these things that I just talked about. What if we build long-term shareholder value and stop focusing on the short term? What if we didn't actually get funded by venture capitalists because we were able to show that we had 500 million users, but instead we were able to show that we had sustainable, stable growth and an opportunity for us to retain those users because we were going to do right by them? What if, instead of actually sucking up all the information that we can without providing the information to users, what if we set reasonable, rational default settings regarding privacy? What if we changed the whole system and made that the standard instead of the standard that is today? So again, I know this because we've done this at Mozilla, and I'm going to tell you, I know we haven't done it perfectly. I know that you guys out there can actually think of things to even do better than what we've done, but I want to talk a little about it because it's something that it shows that you can still generate $400, $500 million in revenue and not have to forget the fact that you've made a promise to your users that you're going to protect their data and protect and allow them to have control. So we have a code at Mozilla that our code is open, it's transparent, our data collection is therefore open and transparent, and everybody can actually audit that. This gets back to the old model of security, right? Trust but verify. Can verify what we're doing. So open source is one of the things that we think is really important to be able to demonstrate that not only are you walking the walk, but you're talking the talk, and then you can talk the walk. These are the ways that we can do this. We also have this very simple phrase that we use, which is no surprises. It's one of the things that I put in play right when I got to Mozilla. I said, what if we actually don't have a 20-page privacy policy? Because that 20-page privacy policy is never going to actually deliver to users the things that users need. What if all we did was we said, yeah, lawyers, we get it. We know that you want to protect us, but what if we said, hey, here are the 2 things that we really think that you would be surprised by, and you should take a look at these 2 things, and oh, by the way, you can look at the other things too. But we really implemented this no surprises rule, and I wanted to remove the notion of having privacy be a defensive mechanism and privacy policies being defensive. Think about it, if you can turn this into an offensive value to your product, and you can say, hey, look, here are the things that you really care about. Yeah, our lawyers want us to tell you about these 20 other things, but we're going to put that in the second page, and you can look at it. It's all there. But really, these 2 things are really what are going to surprise you as you're going through our product. What if we thought about it like that? The basic tenet of the no surprises is that it's different than most companies. Most companies really do let their lawyers draft their privacy notice and their privacy policies. And in doing that, they forego a huge opportunity to engage with the users. Because I can promise you one thing, having been a lawyer for many, many years of my life, that we're not so good at engaging with users. I mean, that's kind of just common sense. And then we have these things called lean data principles. And the lean data principles are you collect what you need, you anonymize it as quickly as you can, you delete it when you no longer need it, and you check yourself as often as you can. And then the value of the lean data principles is you can always collect more, by the way. You just have to make sure that you're talking to your users as you're collecting that. We also have this governing board internally, which we make sure that there's a group that knows what every single group is collecting, so that we can actually verify that they collected it. And we have a person in each product organization and even in the engineering orgs that can verify what they're doing and how they're collecting that data and when they're deleting it and when they're anonymizing it. And we make products that actually are trying to put users in control. Our browser product, for example, we're actually trying to remove this notion of just having it be that you go and you opt into using a product, and we say maybe it should just be that way by default. We're testing right now enhanced tracking protection, which is a way that you can block trackers. Just default setting block trackers in the browser so that you can actually make sure that lots of different companies are not getting access to your data, and the user might not even know. Now, there are challenges with that from an ecosystem standpoint, and we have to make sure that not only are we doing something that's right by the user, but we're not completely harming the ecosystem from a platform standpoint, but these are conversations that we can have. If we do these things and we do them in a way that actually brings together all the different pieces that we really care about. So we really care about our users. I know that we all say that. And we really care about doing things that they want. Well, right now, they're hitting us over the head and telling us they don't want us to do the work the way we've been doing it. Every company pretends to support transparency. Every company pretends to support privacy. Every tech company, I promise you, is going to some way support privacy legislation. But every company is going to pay lip service to all of these things. But the truth is, only some companies really do anything about it. And you can check that, because you can look to see what they're doing internally and not just saying externally. Most are still in the service of a less secure internet, and frankly, they're committed to status quo, because status quo, which isn't transparent, is actually generating a ton of revenue for them. So this is what we can do. We need you. We need developers. We need folks who actually, people really listen to you internally at your companies. We need you to raise these issues. We need you to say, no, this is going to affect my product, and I'm not going to let the lawyers draft those privacy notices. I'm going to make it part of the product that I'm developing and creating. You can help change the ecosystem. Startups need to think about this at the very beginning. I know in the earlier talks, we're talking about all these things that startups can't do and that venture's not funding. Well, guess what, people? We can actually change that. We can change that. If we sit back and we just let things continue and pretend that this just happens to us, then we're going to lose even more. I promise you that. We're going to be in a world where we have regulation that we can't actually develop and create under. We're going to have things that come in these regulations that are so complicated for us to be able to grow on that it's going to make things really hard. We already have some of that. How are you going to define whether something is truthful or untruthful? How are you going to define whether it's disinformation on your platform? These things are going to continue if we don't actually change the conversation. And we can do it. Demand more from the companies that you work for to do the right thing. Think about your corporate structure. At Mozilla, part of the reason why we can make these changes is that we're not just all about the revenue. We are owned by a nonprofit. That is our shareholder. And that is a weird corporate structure, by the way, and very hard to navigate sometimes, so I'm not advocating for that. But what I am advocating for is what we can do in almost every state in our country is we can set up companies that have a public benefit requirement too. And if you set up your corporate structure so that you're still a for-profit, but you have one other thing that you have to think about all the time as you're doing business, it changes the dynamic. Shareholders and money is important under that model because you're a for-profit, but it's equally important for you to actually look at that public benefit requirement that you've put in there. So think about your corporate structure as you're developing. And use your products and not your privacy policies or your privacy notices to engage with users. This is your opportunity. Let's change the conversation. We have to think about, do we want to just accept the world as it is today? Or do we want to change it? Do we want to make it better? Whose side are you on? Are you on the side of your users? Are you on the side of status quo? And I want us all to remember, as we leave this room, it's their data, not ours. Thank you.